Now, this budget makes hard decisions for hard times. New policies have been largely offset across this year and next to avoid adding to inflation when price pressures are most acute. And nearly all of the tax upgrades over the forward estimates have been returned to the budget, not spent. 99% returned to the budget over the next 2 years and 92% returned to the budget over the next 4 years. Now, as a result of this discipline, payments will fall in real terms over the next 2 years, and real spending growth over the forward estimates is flat, averaging just 0.3% a year. Speaker, Australians just don't have enough to show for $1 trillion of debt, and gross debt as a share of GDP at its highest level in more than 70 years. Now, our responsible decisions mean gross debt to GDP will be 37.3% in 22-23 and remain lower over the forward estimates compared to the pre-election forecasts. So that's less debt than our predecessors, less debt but with more to show for it. The deficit for 2022-23 is now forecast to be $36.9 billion, an improvement of $41.1 billion. But while the temporary revenue boosts we're getting from higher employment and higher commodity prices will fade and fall, the profound and permanent spending pressures on the budget are forecast to grow and grow. The budget that we inherited was stuck in a structural deficit. So our job in the short term is to limit growth in spending, especially while inflation is high, return as much of our revenue upgrades as we can to the bottom line, and focus new spending on investments that grow the capacity of the economy. And this budget does that. And in the longer term, there's a bigger job to do as well, to put the budget on a more sustainable path. But tonight we take the first step with a budget repair package that delivers $28.5 billion in improvements over the next 4 years. Now, this unwinds wasteful or unnecessary spending, redirects it towards higher quality investments and priorities, and improves the integrity and fairness of our tax system. Our spending audit has helped identify $22 billion in savings over the next 4 years. This includes our election commitment to reduce spending on external contractors, consultancies, advertising, travel and legal services, expecting to save the budget $3.6 billion. And this budget makes our tax system more sustainable by making sure multinationals pay a fairer share of tax in Australia, by extending successful tax compliance programs, and by giving the ATO the resources they need to crack down on tax dodging. Together, these initiatives save a further $4.7 billion over 4 years. Now, this is just the beginning of our budget repair work, and it's just the beginning of the conversation that we need to have as a country about our economic and fiscal challenges and about the choices that we need to make on what is affordable and what is fair, so we can pay to service the debt that was left to us when borrowing costs are the fastest growing budget pressure, rising at more than 14% a year over a decade, and so we can pay for the things that Australians value most. Speaker, our priorities speak to who we are as a country, how we care for each other and how we protect each other. We choose to pay for better hospitals and healthcare. This budget invests $6.1 billion in hospitals, in Medicare, in extending COVID-19 support and expanding access to healthcare in the suburbs and regions of our great country. We choose to pay for better aged care and better wages for those giving care. This budget invests more than $2.5 billion to put nurses back into nursing homes, improve the quality of food and respond to the recommendations of the Royal Commission. We choose dignity for Australians with a disability. This budget begins the task of repairing the NDIS and securing its future. And we choose to defend our nation against current and future threats. Our government will ensure the Australian Defence Force is well positioned to meet our security challenges over the next decade and beyond, with defence funding rising beyond 2% of GDP over the forward estimates. And after nearly a decade of neglect and disrespect, we are restoring our role as a diligent and dependable partner and friend to our Pacific neighbours for a stable, peaceful and more prosperous region. Speaker, in this budget, we're also funding a record investment of $1.7 billion over 6 years to end violence against women and children, investing $1.2 billion in practical measures to close the gap for First Nations people and communities and to begin preparations for a referendum on a voice to Parliament, allowing older Australians to keep more of their pension when they work, responding to the recommendations from the interim report of the Royal Commission into defence and veteran suicide, and investing in better support for the women and men who serve us, establishing the long overdue National Anti-Corruption Commission, and beginning a new discussion about measuring what matters, the strength of our economy and the well-being of our people. Speaker, Australians know that there are hard days to come and hard decisions to accompany them. And getting through this period stronger than we were before will rely on the very best aspects of our national character: our resilience, our pragmatism, our cooperation and our confidence, and above all else, our belief in each other. And it will rely on a government dedicated and determined to confront challenges ignored for too long and to seize the opportunities that won't wait for us any longer. This budget does more than end a wasted decade, a decade marked by energy chaos, a crisis in aged care, skills shortages and stagnant wages, and not enough to show for $1 trillion in debt. It does more than draw a line under the drift, decline and decay that defined it. It begins to put things right. It begins to build a better future that befits our people and the sacrifices that they make for each other. A future we can all have a stake in, all sharing in its success. A stronger, more resilient Australia with more opportunities for more people in more parts of our amazing country. I commend the budget and the bill to the House.